Hey, everybody. Welcome to Open World Chat. We're here for another fun, geeky exchange of ideas and challenging of the thoughts of our listeners, probably pissing you all off, which is
Hopefully.
hopefully. Yeah, exactly. I'm John Odom. Mark Card is here with me. Mark, how you doing?
Howdy. How's it going, John?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, we're going to talk about franchise fatigue today. It's just something that I don't think we need to explain. There's a lot of franchises out there. Everything's franchise, everything's a sequel, as is so often discussed and complained about. Um, how much of how much of the struggles of these movies really are fatigue? How much of it may not be franchise fatigue, but genre fatigue, such as superhero fatigue? We're going to talk about it. We're going to figure it out, have a nice free-flowing conversation. And if you disagree with us, well, find yourself another podcast, by God. So, Mark, you had actually mentioned we should talk about this. How fatigued are you? What did you have in mind when you mentioned it?
Well, I have a high fatigue tolerance. So I like to watch everything that I have time for. But even I am thinking that just because you ought to do some stuff doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Oh, what is the Star Trek president quote in Undiscovered Country? Redefine
Oh,
progress not as oh
oh, now we got to find it.
no, I don't remember what it is. Not that we must do it. Oh God. You're looking for the quote now. I totally derailed what you
Yeah.
were saying, but I couldn't stand it. Star Trek entered my brain and I had to pipe up. Progress not because we can do a thing does not mean that we should do a thing, I think was it. So there you go. Star Trek is backing you up. The president of the Federation, that weird guy with the white hair.
Yes. Red.
Was that his name?
Same actor that plays Red on that 70s show.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, you're right. Right. Now that you say that, I can totally see.
Kurt somebody or other. I can't remember his name.
Well, but anyways, go on. I cut you off.
So I found the quote is let us redefine progress to mean that just because we can do a thing, it does not necessarily mean that we must do that thing.
There you go.
And that's really the theme of what I'm talking about today.
Truth.
I think the Marvel franchise, I think the DCU and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they have all really kind of sinned here. There are a lot of instances where they think, oh, well, this is really good in the comics, so it's going to make a great short limited series.
Hmm.
And I think they've made some mistakes here.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to preface this by talking about some really great things they've done that I think people might not have seen coming. WandaVision, did you watch that?
Oh, that was great. Great. And it was a critical darling too. It did really well. It broke my heart at one point. That quote, you know the quote, right?
I sure do. I
Yeah.
sure do. Um,
The grief.
but it's grief, but not love persisting.
I know.
And oh
Oh,
my God,
oh.
yeah, and let me just tell you, if you think uh Lizzie Olsen is not a good actress, go watch this show
Mhm.
because she will put you down. I mean, it is a really great performance all the way through the series.
Yeah.
And at the end, like you said, they just crush you with it.
Yeah.
Crush you with it. She is just so good in this show. The other one I want to talk about is Loki.
Hmm.
I had no idea what they were going to do with Loki. I was like, they're making a Loki TV show? How is that? How is that going to work? And then you watch it and it's slow at first.
Uh-huh.
It's really slow at first, at least for me. And I'm going, oh no, they took a great character and just killed it. And then, oh, well, hang on, wait a minute. I don't know, a few episodes in, they begin to kind of show you what direction they're going to go in. And the only problem that I have with this show, oh, and by the way, the ending is just great. It puts Loki's character in a place where uh he's going to stop being so unfocused and difficult and troublesome, but still have room to live up to what he's the god of. So I think that was a great ending. But it shows the beginning. It's a good transition because it shows the beginning of kind of something that they're going to have problems with. Now, part of the reason why Marvel is going to have problems with this has nothing to do with what Marvel did, but with He Who Remains in Loki, they have the problem of the actor who's supposed to play Kang getting in trouble with the law.
Jonathan something. I should know that.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you can tell this is an old guy podcast because he can't remember things.
Yeah, yeah. I usually prep a little bit. I didn't prep any for this. It's just,
But
fine.
so with his departure, they're going to have to retool a whole phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we'll see if that helps. But then they started doing some stuff that I don't think necessarily helped their cause much. I must say, I really like the Hawkeye series.
I love that too. That one gets disrespected a lot. And
It does, but I think it ties up the whole thing with Scarlett Johansson, and Black Widow and that relationship with Yelena. And it sets up, and I don't think they intended to do this, but it sets up the upcoming Thunderbolts too.
yeah, which I have great concerns about, but that's another story.
I don't know though. I'm going to see it anyway because both. Let's see, who is it that attracts me to that show? David Harbour, who I
Mhm.
think is brilliant as Red Guardian. I think he's hilarious. I think he's brings the right kind of uh, comic relief that you need. He's really good in that. And
You know
then,
what
of
bugged me
course,
about him
what?
and bugged me about, Rachel Weisz, who is my celebrity crush, um, is when we first meet them at the beginning of Black Widow,
Right.
they're speaking perfect English.
Yeah.
So how come when we see him later, he's ever since then he's got the thick Russian accent?
That
It's
sounds like a director made a change in that.
yeah, well, they wanted a sort of buffoonery to it that they and people think that these big bombastic sort of Russian accents come with a certain front-loaded
Yeah.
buffoonery, which I don't think is true. But
Either menace or
or yeah,
flair.
one or the other.
Yeah. So, but the other thing that attracts me to Thunderbolts is Florence Pugh. She's one
Oh,
of those
God.
actresses that makes everything better. And who the hell ever thought she would have made a great Yelena?
Yeah. Well, when I heard that they had cast her, I actually thought it was kind of brilliant.
Yeah,
Um,
she's so good. And boy, talk about not faltering on the accent.
yeah, no, she's great. She can do anything. And she was such a high point of Hawkeye, as was Haley Steinfeld. I mean, it was just a great show. And Jeremy Renner's always good. And, it was where we learned that we were getting the Netflix Marvelverse brought
Mhm.
in. It's a disrespected series. People forget how many people were watching it and how what a good time they were having when they did. But
Yeah,
we're way
but
up. We're not up.
but and Hawkeye really sets up Haley Steinfeld. She's
Mhm.
funny. She's a bona fide action star. She's just got everything you need to be a Marvel hero.
Mhm.
So
It's funny going back to WandaVision, you actually, I think, started on a trail that's very um, illustrative of some of the problem with the Marvel franchise. Because we had a follow-up to that to fully appreciate the follow-up, you would have needed to, the movie Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness
yeah.
was the follow-up to WandaVision. And it detracted a little. I mean, the movie was a standalone movie, but still, it detracted a little if you hadn't seen WandaVision.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
it was an
Well,
inadequate follow-up, despite the fact that they had Sam Raimi. But this interconnectedness means that you have to be so committed to
yep.
seeing everything that it doesn't work. It breaks. You only leave some of the hardcores. You even start losing some of the hardcores. I haven't watched all these things.
Oh
You know,
no, I haven't either. And there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that people don't know. There's a series of very small shorts about Groot, and
Mhm.
they're all animated.
Oh yeah. Right.
And if you're going to set people up, you need to make sure you set people up by only making a certain number of things. Get back into this thing that, just because you can do it doesn't mean you must.
Right.
And this is a big problem. And then you start getting some things like, okay, so down the road, I think when they reboot Daredevil, uh, you
Coming
needed to
right up.
see,
Coming right
uh,
up.
yeah, you needed to see the. I think if you're really gonna, you might need to see the series Echo.
I hope not. Echo. I didn't finish Echo. I found it kind of dull and I didn't finish it, even though I really like the lead. She's so impressive to me. But I did not finish Echo, and Secret Invasion left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I didn't. I tried to watch Secret Invasion, and I was like, they're just trying to do stuff because they can. They're just trying to make content because there's some producer out there going, we have to have more content. We've got to be good, 24/7. It's like the 24/7 news cycle. They start making up stuff that just probably doesn't fit and shouldn't be done there.
Right. And the quality was in the crapper. And they used to care a lot more about quality. So I think there's three things going on here.
Yeah,
You got to watch everything. And there's too much. Um, there's so much that even the hardcore geeks aren't watching it anymore. There's the quality issue. So that's number two, is that they've taken for granted that they need to have high quality stuff. And
oh
it's
yeah,
gotten worse. I think it's not just fatigue among the critics. The critics have there's a lot of truth to what they're saying. Um, and then finally, everything now has to have a $250 million budget. And
yeah,
the old
yeah,
ones, when they started building the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when you had, First Avenger, when you had the first Iron Man, when you had Thor, they all came in at more $150 million budgets, which was plenty.
right.
And the actors weren't known at the time, so they couldn't command the kind of paychecks that they do now. But still, that was a great formula, and it's been forgotten. So those three things, and I think the new DCU, the Gunniverse, is heading as fast as it can into some of the same problems, not just of Marvel, but it's doubling down on some of the problems that caused the new DCU to be launched in the first place, and that's the failure, or the inadequacy, I suppose, of the DCEU and some of the other DC movies. They're going to take the biggest problems of that, the biggest problems of Marvel, they're going to combine them, and except for this Superman movie coming out, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mistake to necessarily put one guy in charge of all of it.
I think you're right.
Uh, I
I think
don't think that's the way it was done in the early days of the DCU. And it's kind of funny you stepped on my transition. My
Mhm.
transition was going to be, as much as we have really legitimate criticism about franchise fatigue with Marvel, boy, uh, none of the other franchises are doing any better, and in fact, they're doing worse.
Right, right. We
Uh,
still got some doozies in Marvel that are guaranteed money. Uh,
yeah.
and so they're still making money. Yeah, they're still making. Yeah, if you go back at the recent movies, they're doing fine. It's not like the Sony Spider-Verse.
Well, ouch. Especially with the last one.
Uh,
Madam Web was just, and the
oh,
thing is,
you forgot Craven. Craven was in the.
oh, I have, listen, I knew from the moment they talked about casting that I was like, Craven's going to be bad.
Oh, I like
Really,
Aaron Taylor
really.
Johnson.
I like Aaron Taylor Johnson, and he's great in Age of Ultron.
Mhm.
And I loved Kick Ass.
Oh yeah.
And he was even good in the Fall Guy.
I didn't see that, so I don't
It
remember
came
him.
out last summer, and he was pretty good.
And he
You know,
was fine in the American Godzilla. He was good.
yeah. But I just Craven is a very niche. comic book. And I just kind of think they missed.
Yeah.
And I think it's this thing where look at all this incredible material we have. This is
Mhm.
bound to be no, not going to be there.
Right. Well, I
So
think it's clear from, I mean, there's the obscurity issues with characters like Craven, characters like Morbius. Um, but there's also, I think if you look over at Joker on the DC side, the first Joker did really well. It was an exceptionally made movie. I think
yeah,
it was a little overrated, but I recognize the artistry in it and the quality of it. Um, the second one was what the heck is going on? But
yeah,
still, I think the second one and the Sonyverse are showing you there's not a lot of interest in movies based on bad guys. There just
yeah,
isn't. I mean, there's a niche interest from the fanboy set and the fangirl set who are curious, but the folks at large, they're not interested in a villain story, certainly not a villain they've never heard of. And that's one of the mistakes that James Gunn is barreling into. Do we
yeah.
really a Clayface movie? Who's asking for a Clayface movie?
I have to tell you, in the DC universe, the one thing I really like is Kaylee Cuoco's Harley Quinn show.
Yeah, but it's not canon. It's not part of
Oh
the
no,
DC.
it's not. Of course, it's not
Yeah.
canon, and I don't think it was ever meant to be.
No, I
But
don't
I
think.
think that shows you the kind of quality you can have in a
Yeah, that's a
DC.
villain. There you go. She's a villain. You're right.
And then they pair her up with Ivy, which is not. That's not. I mean, that's something that happens in the comics.
Yeah.
And so it's not just, oh, well, we have to make this a topical show. And
Mhm.
and that's a good show. It's lighthearted, it's not serious. But man, they're really taking a hard look at the characters.
Mhm.
And they're doing a good job of it, I think.
Yeah.
And people don't take this seriously. They think it's just this light, fluffy show. And I'm not going to disagree with that, but I think it's really well done. I
Mhm.
like it a lot. And there's no way that's going to be kept as canon.
Yeah. No, 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 not at all. It's interesting. You were talking about how one person shouldn't be in charge of these things. I've been thinking while you've been talking, I think I mostly agree. I think Kevin Feige has generally done a very good job running. I mean, he's kind of played, as we say, the Marvel thing's running out of steam, and I think that's on him. But the early part of it and getting it going, I think he did a masterful job.
Well,
And
he
he
did a great
does,
job in finding good directors. He did a great job in finding good writers. He did a great job in casting.
and
And
that's the difference
that's
because
right.
the
And,
DCU was the Snyderverse. It was a creator with a creative voice trying to do the whole thing and a very distinctive one. And that's what DCU is doing now. They've got a creator that's going to create everything in his own image. They both want to create everything in their own image, and it's not going to work. And with Feige, he wasn't a creator. He sought out the creators to make a cohesive picture, and he did a good.
yeah, so he was a general and he developed a really tight officer corps that then carried out what his vision was, but he let them do it their way.
Right on.
And that's really the difference. But what's happened is, and this happens to a lot of writers that I like, a lot of writers I like, they're really great at the beginning, but then when they make a gazillion dollars and sell 50 billion books, they go, oh, I don't need an editor anymore. And boy, does it show. The books get longer and more convoluted,
Yeah.
and they fire their editors, and that's the end of it. And that's really kind of, I think, what's happened with Kevin Feige.
Mhm.
He's kind of started to believe his own press.
Yeah.
And so now he's trying to exhibit more and more control on it. But just look at Iron Man. I love the stories about Iron Man. So John Favreau agreed to do Elf,
Hmm.
but only if the studio would finance Iron Man later.
Think I've heard that. Yeah.
And they said, okay. And then Elf was a masterpiece in modern fairy tales. It was a great movie. It's my
Mhm.
favorite Christmas movie, and it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then it came time to cast Iron Man.
Hmm.
And we all know Robert Downey Jr.'s story, big liability.
Yeah.
Although he was then sober, he hadn't been sober for very long. And basically, the studio told John Favreau, nope, not doing Robert Downey. And in which case, John Favreau went, remember all that money I made for you for Elf? He said, Robert Downey, or I'm not doing the movie. And that really was the origin of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
It would not have
Yes, it was.
succeeded without that.
Oh, yeah. And I may be wrong about this. Somebody could tell me if I'm wrong, but I have it in my head that the other bullet that was dodged with him was after the criminally underappreciated Zathura was such a bomb, he was considering getting out of directing entirely. So it's
Right. Yeah, no, but no, I think that's right. But that was Kevin Feige. He listened to the people who
Mhm.
made the movies, who wrote the movies, who portrayed the characters, who directed the movies, and it took off because he did that. Now I don't think he's doing that as much.
Yeah.
Now I don't think I think he's trying to take more control over the whole shebang.
Mhm.
And I think that's the mistake. And you said something that occurred to me when they said what they're trying to do is make one person in charge of these specific kinds of big universes. Here's the problem. None of the original material was created from one person.
Right. Right.
All of the comics are massive collaborative efforts.
Hmm.
Multiple writers over the years, multiple inkers, multiple colorists, multiple story editors. Even Stan Lee, whose incredibly fertile mind created all kinds of characters, he didn't work alone, never did.
Never did.
Now, the iconography later on is that he did all this stuff on his own, but none of that's true.
Hmm.
Comic books have always been a very collaborative medium, and when you try to make it about one person, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, and I think that's a big problem. We can't finish this conversation without talking about Star Wars, though.
Star Wars. And before we get there, I want to
Yeah.
also mention that I think all of these folks can learn a lesson. Now, this is an extreme version, but the most stable franchise. Nobody's sick of it. It's been going on 60 years. You know which one I'm going to mention. Bond, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
But even Bond right now is in decline.
Well, you think? Because I actually think it's we're very the Daniel Craig era was one of the peak Bond eras, and we're coming off of that, and it's all going to depend on what they do next. But
And that's
what's
what I mean.
interesting is
Be-
the creator, the I cannot remember her name, but the current
it's the daughter of Cubby Broccoli.
right who has complete control over it, and I think it's MGM is the studio
Yeah,
that owns Bond. But they want to expand. They want to do that Marvel DC Sony thing and start having
terrible idea.
a money penny movie. They want to have they just want to have a movie for everybody now. And she is the one holding the line saying, no, that would
Yeah,
water us down.
and that's the only thing you can do here. You
Mhm.
do not want a Bondiverse.
Right, right.
Uh, and but they're still in crisis. And the reason why they're in crisis is who's going to be the next Bond. And ordinarily, this is not a problem,
Mhm.
but it's become a very big problem.
Mhm. Well, everyone was assuming it was going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson, and
Right.
he slipped down. I forget who the current buzz is. Do you remember?
No.
Yeah, I don't either. But anyways, maybe we'll have a Bond episode sometime. That'd be
Well,
fun.
but it's what I was getting to is this. There has been there's been a popular, wouldn't say massive, but a popular suggestion that it should be for years Idris Elba.
Yeah, they dropped that now. And I think it's
Well,
because he's
for
more than
one,
anything,
Idris
it's because
Elba
he's
is too
old.
old.
Yeah, yeah.
For the other, we have to face this question here. Boy, the audiences that love Bond also don't like the idea of a woman or someone who's a person of color to be Bond.
Oh yeah, they'd hate that.
But the
That.
thing that's so I actually know people in the CIA.
Mhm.
I actually know people in secret intelligence agencies because of my previous work.
Oh yeah, I've got family who are so.
And they will tell you the ideal person for clandestine work right now in the CIA is somebody who's Hispanic. And here's why.
Mhm.
You can drop somebody who's Hispanic into North Africa, into the Arab countries, into Afghanistan, into many, many places where we need to have eyes and ears.
Mhm.
Many of them already speak multiple languages, so it's not hard to train them.
Mhm.
And it's crazy to think that the British intelligence services don't have people of color in them. They're everywhere, and they're at the top level.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
if it's a different character, people wouldn't react. It's just that it is Bond, you know.
yes, that's exactly right. And this is I've talked to several people online about this because they're talking about Daniel Craig being Sergeant Rock.
Yeah, that's right. You
And
told
I said, all right, so who's the American that's going to play James Bond?
me.
Because it's the same thing. Said, when we have an English actor playing Sergeant Rock, I want an American Bond.
Yeah. Oh, well, you want to talk about Star Wars. I don't want to get away from that because we could easily talk forever. But yeah, Star
Well,
Wars is the obvious next place to go.
yeah, and it has gone out of control.
It is. They've managed it a lot differently than they haven't made the same one of the same mistakes Marvel has. And I'll get to that. I'll let you. You got some thoughts. I'll get out of your way here.
Well, I think there have been some good things. I want to talk about the good things that have come out of this massive expansion of Star Wars.
Mhm.
One is Rogue One. That is the best Star Wars movie made since the original three by far.
I couldn't disagree more strongly.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah.
What's your
I think our main character, she has no agency whatsoever. Everything through the whole movie, everything happens to her. She makes her big speech, but then she goes off and things happen to her, as opposed to somebody like Ray, who is making decisions, making choices as the movies go that help define her character. But if you're not making choices, if you have no agency, I start losing interest.
Yeah, see, here's why I disagree. Um, depending on your perspective, but there's a saying about terrorism, and the saying about terrorism is that terrorists are not born, they're made.
Right.
And so in the case of Jin, I think she was made.
Hmm.
And she was made by the circumstances which were forced upon her by the empire
Hmm.
originally, and then forced upon her by uh, the various people in the republic that affect her.
But then she continued to just be made, just to be let herself be made by everything around her. She started
Uh,
off that way, but she didn't step outside that as a
I
character.
don't think a lot of people do that. I think once they fall in line with the ideology of what they're doing, they just keep going.
It's a fundamental part of drama, though, is that the
Yeah,
character develops and changes, and she doesn't develop at all.
yeah, but I think part of the reason why that's true is because we all know what the outcome of the movie is going to be.
That's true.
Everybody's going to be dead at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert.
Now, Rogue One is, I think, an absolutely key moment in Star Wars, though, because I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you brought about how how much it was good, and we know how it ends, because Star Wars is oversaturated, but they didn't make one of the mistakes that Marvel did, and the DC is doing in spades or about to be doing, and that's that Star Wars pretty much was always giving people what they want.
Yeah,
The difference is they've given us too much.
yeah,
So even that there's a quantity issue, but people wanted the Rogue One story. People want to see more Boba Fett.
yeah,
People wanted to see, Clone Wars come out into
yeah.
canon in it physically exist, right?
Well,
And want that in.
I think for the
They're
first
giving
two
people what they
seasons,
want.
yeah, I think for the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, they're a home run.
Yeah.
And the reason why is you get Jon Favreau, who took the passion of being an
Mhm.
actual fan from, early years of his life and going, okay, we've got to get back to this. We've got to get back to good storytelling. We've got to get back to interesting characters. We've got
Mhm.
to get back to thinking about Star Wars the way George Lucas thought about Star Wars at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And
I want to disagree with you a little there too, I think.
Okay.
Because I think the line of let's stick with what George Lucas saw about Star Wars continued into the underwhelming third trilogy. And I think once you hit Rogue One, you have a branch that goes off, which starts
Yeah.
reflecting much more sort of modern, darker sensibilities.
Yeah, they've started a new timeline.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, they started a whole new like circulatory
but
system.
I should be more specific about what I mean. I'm talking about the visuals. I'm talking about
Oh, yeah.
the lighting. I'm talking about the set dressing, the production values.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking
I
about.
can totally dig that. Yeah.
And he's a big the John Favreau Star Wars stuff is a big return to that kind of visual style,
Mhm.
I think. Um, and I think, but after that, what happens? It just kind of trails off. A lot of these things in Star Wars, they start strong and then they fall apart.
The one thing I will say is that the individual series don't necessarily depend on you having watched the other individual series.
And that's really smart.
That's
That is really good.
that's critical, and that keeps it sustainable, I think, but it's still watering down the brand by having so much.
Well, and it also adds to the problem that every time they do this, they're just going to make more stuff that's more and more obscure.
Right. And when they hit that magic point, it told us you can't keep this up forever. And that magic point was Solo. Like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
look
yeah,
at
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was not good. And the thing is, that character deserved much better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is a classic character in American cinema. When people talk about the role models that kids today have for masculinity, our generation, one of them was Han Solo for sure.
Except that he shot first.
Well, so what? In a situation like that, you would too.
Well,
Anyway,
we've covered a few franchises, and I mean,
we're missing one
oh,
that I
what's that?
think we need to talk about.
It's the Abbott and Costello verse, right? With the Universal monsters,
No,
Abbott,
you're going to be
and
ashamed that
Dracula, and Frankenstein, and
you're going
that's.
to be ashamed that you've missed this.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Don't tell me then. Franchise. Da 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 da. Which one are you thinking? There's so many.
Star Trek.
Oh, well, Star Trek. Star Trek is like this.
Got you.
This. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's true. That's running into potential problems too if it doesn't watch it because it's doing the thing of not giving us more, but not giving people what they want to see. I mean, was anybody asking for a Section 31 movie? Really?
I'll tell you the one that the home run here though is Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
And this is not running into the problem that you just mentioned with Jin and Rogue One.
Mhm.
We know what the end of Strange New Worlds is going to be.
Mhm.
We know.
Oh, the end of
Captain
Pike, anyways.
Captain Pike knows.
Yeah.
And yet all of these characters are more and more dynamic and more interesting and have this great and they're starting to reboot stuff in it now. The Gorn are far more menacing.
Yeah, I'm one of those who says they are so far removed from what had been canon, and I don't want to marry myself to canon.
Yeah.
Like Leonard Nimoy said, we should never do that, and he's absolutely right. But I would have liked a little closer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But so that's the high water mark for the Star Trek franchise. Um, much as I kind of liked the movie, the last of the Kelvin timeline movies,
Uh-huh, Beyond. Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan.
I liked it. I felt it was like, I mean, it wasn't one that I walked away thinking I've had more fun than ever, but I thought it was like a solid episode with with motorcycles
One
and
of the more solid, light-hearted episodes.
yeah, yeah.
One of the
Not
more
one of the
solid
goofy ones.
competitive. So compare it to an original series episode. Which of those light-hearted, kind of more comedic episodes would that be?
Well, let me think because the original series had full-on comic ones.
Yeah,
And they had serious ones, but they did have some in between. And what's a good in between one? Honestly, a good in between one was probably Sitting on the Edge of Forever. It definitely
Yeah, there's
boomerang.
some good moments to that one
Yeah, yeah.
about why he has to wear the cap over his ears.
Yep. And I am trying to create memory circuit, whatever kind, out of bear skins, and I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember the line.
Yes, because he asks Kirk where they can find a small piece of platinum.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff in there that was funny, but it was also more serious. So it was a good in between one.
Yeah. So let's see what else. I'm not. I think there are some okay movies in the Kelvin. I think they make a mistake, a massive mistake in the one with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Into
He was
Darkness.
great casting there, but
Oh, I think
I,
he was terrible casting. I think they had an opportunity not to whitewash the part,
yeah, that's true.
to put in,
Yeah,
I mean, they had an opportunity to put in a Sikh or at least an Indian, and that
sure, yes,
extraordinary. And I appreciate Strange New Worlds when we meet the young Khan that they
yes.
right. But no, they whitewashed it with Cumberbatch. Great actor, did a great job, but I did not appreciate the whitewashing.
Yeah, we've actually kind of drifted from our original topic. So
True.
uh this brings us into what I think is one of the biggest problems with Marvel, with DC, with Star Trek is the multiverse problem.
The multiverse problem. Yeah, we are definitely at multiverse fatigue.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
mean because I think especially for Marvel, it's just going to get worse,
Yeah, we do.
especially knowing the plans that are coming up.
Yeah. Secret Wars. I mean, I assume it's gonna be based on Secret Wars 2, which, I mean, of course it is, which is a fantastic comic series, but it is peak multiverse. It is,
And I think some of the casting mistakes they've made show it.
mm,
I mean, at the end of the Infinity Saga, Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man's dead.
yeah, and I don't like the way they're bringing him back. It's a cheap trick for a cheap buck to make him
Yeah, I
Doctor
think it
Doom.
is. And now, of course, we know Scarlet Witch is coming back.
Right. And I want to know,
And
is Downey going to be Victor Von Doom, or is he just going to be an evil Tony Stark? Because I think,
that's the big question, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, if he's just an evil Tony Stark, then they're missing the opportunity to bring us the character that the
Right.
fanboys and fangirls want to see.
Yeah, well, Victor Van Doom, smarter than Tony, you know,
Hmm?
more twisted.
Yep.
Uh, because this is what I love about all of Stan Lee's characters, all of the Marvel characters is sure they're superheroes, but they're all twisted up, especially in the comics.
Yep.
I mean,
Stan's character. What's the only Marvel character that's really not screwed up, that's really got it? That's
who?
like it's Captain America and it's not a Stan Lee.
Yeah, but see, I don't think that's true either.
I mean, he's had existential crises.
He's super alienated no matter where he goes. He's always alienated.
I don't know that I agree with that, but
Oh, I do because this is what I talked about when I was a guest on your show.
mm,
When he's in the army after his 5 4Fs, they finally let him in. He's out of place. He's a scrawny little weakling, right?
yeah,
He's not good enough to be in the army,
right.
right? Okay. Fast forward, he takes the super soldier serum. Now he's a super soldier.
Hmm.
He's better than everybody. He has to lead. There is no other role for him.
Hmm.
He can't be a human being.
Yeah, but he's a natural at what,
Yeah, but he's a natural because of who he was before. And
yeah,
who he was before is an outsider. So even in the army where he's at his most integrated, he's still an outsider.
yeah. But
Okay.
I don't know, he's so grounded though. I mean, when he's had crises, it's like his existential crisis when he became nomad. It's because he was the grounded one. And everybody around him, the government, they were all the fucked up
So
one.
thanks for making my point.
Oh,
He's
oh,
the
I see.
he's the
Juxtaposing.
outsider.
I think he still kind of represented every man in that context, but I see it either way. Yeah. I see what you're
But
saying.
but then when he is in the ice and he comes out of the ice,
Mhm.
He's a guy with 40 sensibilities,
Yeah.
and he has to adapt. Uh, and it he's alienated. That character is alienated everywhere he goes. And the difference is he handles it well.
Well, and that's true. And when he was introduced in the comics, it had only been about 20 years he'd been gone. So there's not quite the shock going
Right.
on. And then of course with as with all the other characters, he just sort of aged with history. But yeah, it was a pretty stark difference for him in the MCU, and that did make him very interesting in a way that the
Yeah, it added a lot to the character, I think. And the writers who decided to do that,
Mhm.
they did the character and the history of the character in the comic books a real service. They
Yeah.
made him more interesting. They made him more complicated. But this multiverse stuff, he's coming back.
Yeah.
Captain America's coming back in the next movie. Now, there's a
Well,
little bit,
Steve Rogers is, right?
yeah.
We
Steve
don't
Rogers is,
necessarily know if he's
yeah. Well, I don't think I think they're gonna make him the Hydra version in this movie. Honestly,
They could. It still could be old Cap.
yeah. He could still be old Cap, but he's coming back.
Yeah.
So they're trying to what? It's been what? The first one was 2008, so it's been 17 years. They're already trying to regain the glory of the original series.
Yeah.
And if it works, it's going to be great. If it doesn't, it's going to really suck.
It won't work as well as any of us hope or as well as they expect, but I think it'll work. I trust the Russos. I really do.
I do too. I really do. Those guys understand the material.
Yeah.
And when I really started figuring them out was when I found out what movie The Winter Soldier is based on.
Oh, I know it was inspired by things like all those paranoid 70s movies like
3 Days of the Condor.
3 Days of the Condor was always mentioned. Yeah.
They said, no, I heard them in an interview say this movie is an homage to 3 Days of the Condor.
That's cool.
And that's why they brought Robert Redford in for it.
Right. That's right. He was perfect.
So when contemporary directors have this kind of sense of history,
Mhm.
I love that. So yeah, I trust the Russos. They had lots of home runs
Yeah, they
in
should.
there. And this goes back to what we talked about why the DC, I mean, there are the MCU worked in the first place. The MCU worked in the first place because Kevin Feige took all these super creative people and let them do their jobs.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the definition of leadership. Gather a big team and then don't get in their way.
Well, and they had such an eye for interesting, underused talent too. Russo's are
Right.
a perfect example. And yeah, then they
Oh,
gave us Winter Soldier, which I think to this day is the best MCU movie we've had.
it is for me.
Yeah.
It is for me. I know a lot of people talk about Endgame, but that's just because it's the terminal station.
Yeah. It's,
And I think that's why people think it's the best one. But for me, so my definition of a good movie is it possible to take a scene out of the movie and have it still be the same movie?
mm.
And the answer for Winter Soldier is no.
Yeah, okay. I was afraid you were going to
There
say, yeah,
is no scene you can take out of that movie and have it be the same movie.
I agree too.
Every scene has to be there. Every scene is shot exactly the right way. Every scene carries on the same continuity. It's that's a great movie.
Yeah. Well, I think we've reached the end here. Uh,
Yeah.
we've had another good conversation, another one that could go on a while, but I think we've covered the big pieces of franchise fatigue, maybe superhero fatigue, a little multiverse fatigue, and it's just fatigue. Now we're just fatigued. So we're gonna
Now, I just have to wait and see what's going to happen next.
right. And then we'll be back talking about that. All right, folks, thanks for listening. We're taking
Yep.
off.
Thanks a lot.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek.